Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's no worries, and we're still filing in. Yeah, defend kittens, dude. I love that shirt, dude. That's fucking awesome. Yeah, so I guess the best way for me to start this would be to say that we've been on tour for 2 weeks, and the dichotomy between being at home, where everything is under your control, and sleep is something that happens rather automatically, versus waking up this morning with our tour manager yelling at me saying, half an hour until you're going to be picked up to do a guitar clinic. And that guitar clinic is going to comprise things that you have no knowledge of what shall be until you get there is certainly a hell of a thing. So I am in the midst of waking up, but I've had coffee and we're at the Axe Palace and I'm here for Framus and Fishman. And thank you so much for showing up, all of you guys. So, yeah. Hooray for us. And you know that this is Nick's place, right? Yeah, it's his birthday today, everybody. 35 years old for Nick. Hey, Chris, how's it going, buddy? Yeah. So what brings us to a guitar clinic, I guess, is the first thing that I should start putting my mind to when it comes to figuring out what the hell I should be doing today. Because you often think, okay, well, you do performance, or you show your 6 licks that you do, and you try and prove to everybody that you can still shred when you've stopped doing that about 15 years ago, and that's all I got. It's funny, our guitar tech that's out with us right now, he's such a ripping guitar player. He kills all of us, right? And I just sit in the back and play bass. So I figured that as opposed to doing any of that stuff, I think it would be best to break this into a few sections, one of them being a Q&A, which I think would make a lot of sense because that could lead me effortlessly into topics of which I have none at the moment. And then I think also it would be a good idea for me to run through how I approach this and how that sort of contributes to my writing process. I think that's the best thing. And in fact, that's the best way for us to start. So check this out. Watch me starting. Playing a big chord, unmuting it, hitting the distortion. All right. All right, so anyway, I'm a guitar player. My name's Dev. I've been doing this I'm as old as dirt now, which is crazy. I never saw that happening because I was the young guy in the crew for so long. When I started guitar, I guess it started with banjo because my dad played folk music, and I thought, oh, that's clearly what I want to do is be in a Johnny Cash or Clancy Brothers tribute band when I get older. But then I saw the Monkees when I was 11 and decided that I want to play guitar. My parents wouldn't let me play guitar until I took piano, hated piano, sucked at it. So I finally got a Sears acoustic guitar and I learned a bunch of Motorhead songs, and then that Johnny Cash song that my dad was into. And then I guess it ended up being Led Zeppelin that really changed it because I heard the song Friends. And I guess how's that go? It's like my big space boot, by the way. Sorry. Yeah. So, And I remember when I first heard it, I thought, wow, that guy's an amazing guitar player because I couldn't transcribe it into standard tuning. And I was trying to figure out how he could manipulate his hands to get that. And then I read on a forum, or probably wasn't a forum back in '76 or whatever it was. I read in Guitar Player magazine that he's actually in open C tuning. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And the tuning that he used for that song is what I've been using now for 30 some odd years. And that's from low to high, C, G, C, G, C, E. So the way that this tuning works is it's basically a big C major chord. And the physicality of it as a singer is really easy because when I'm riffing out and pulling rock moves 1 through 49, I can just go like this, and I've got a power chord, or I've got my octaves or whatever. But I've been writing in this tuning for so long now that if you put me into standard, the only things that I can remember are like the 1 or 2 songs that I tried to woodshed when I was a teenager. I could do the beginning of Far Beyond the Sun, and I can do, the beginning of The Sentinel by Judas Priest, and that's it. That's all I got. That's my repertoire. So I'm going to start by showing you basically how this tuning functions, and maybe you'll see it as being something that's useful to you as well. I love Ravi Shankar as well. I love the idea of like a pedal tone with guitar, you know what I mean? So it's like, so that you're always sort of, the C's and the G's are always sort of resonating, right? Got that sort of sitar sort of vibe. So with this tuning, how I've basically found myself functioning in it is it's just fifths. Everything is just C, G, C, G, C. And this high E string is kind of the turd in the punch bowl that you don't use, right? You'll be doing your riffs, and then you get up to that one, and it's all weird, right? But it's broken up into, I guess, 3 or 4 ways. Octaves is the biggest thing for me, because when I write, everything is so orchestrated as a result of probably acid or something. Where I remember thinking, oh my God, everything is like everywhere you look, everywhere you listen, everywhere you hear is an infinite fractal of music, and that goes to a million voices and a million trumpets and a million this and a million that. And it wasn't just acid. It was also the fact that I'm wired to be a banana, which combination of those two things is a hell of a thing too. So when I write, I usually start with my foundation being very simple. And octaves work for me in that way because it doesn't imply a tonality. So you've got your C, or you have your G, or whatever. You get your 3rd fret. So when I write riffs, a lot of times it's just... like whatever, there's a riff, right? And as a result of having your bass recording being the guitar, several multi-track guitars, a bass guitar, and the drums, all your tonalities can be implied by the orchestration. So say if I'm just rolling on this, you can just have a big crunchy. So if you're holding this C, for example, all the orchestration can do the other stuff, like or whatever, and then you build all the melodic aspects of it separate from this. And that's basically how my riffs are written. I get something that's got a really solid, someone asked me to define, man, I'm so tired, holy crap. But I'm talking, watch this, I'm talking, yes indeed, I'm a walking. Someone asked me to define what it is I'm doing with the DTP, and the DTP is basically a vehicle for me that has become more successful, and there's a certain thing about it that people seem to like. And by doing that efficiently and making it kind of a heavy metal show, then I'm allowed to go make symphonies and folk records and ambient records. So it's a means to an end, right, in a lot of ways. But I do dig it. But if someone was to define what it is with the DTP, it's like sort of a Black era, sort of Metallica rhythm section with like Def Leppard and Enya. And then some orchestral stuff, and then a logo that looks like a Pepsi commercial, and then kind of like a modern sounding production, right, with a shitload echo. And that's kind of like, that's the definition of the project, right? Yeah, but it works really well because I know what it is that band needs to be and how it functions. It's just a matter of finding something that's emotionally authentic to do each time, or else you're just phoning it in. So the octaves is basically my foundation for writing riffs with that sort of stuff. But the cool thing about this tuning as well, for those of us who are incredibly lazy, is like when you're doing your scales, typically in standard tuning, a major scale's like that, right? Where so each string is a different fingering. But with this, a major scale is the same thing on every string. You're just it's so great. And a minor scale is it's the same thing on each one, and it's with an arpeggio. This string, and this string is the same, and this string and this string is the same. So you're like, right? So it is really like training wheels for guitar. But again, the cool thing about it is just for improv, like a lot of how I spend my time writing is I got these little amps or like an acoustic guitar, and I'll just go sit out in the forest because I'm a hippie. And then you just kind of like, you just kind of mess around, right? More echo. Jeez, come on. What is this? Yeah. There's your problem. And I think I found that over the years, my whole creative process works best for me when I don't think about it, you know? So whenever I'm talking to people or just doing things, I like to let my hands figure out, you know, what's going to happen. And I find that my subconscious mind has a much greater connection to where I'm at emotionally than I do if I try and think about it. So even as I'm talking to you guys, I'll find that just by playing with this sort of open tuning, messing around, it's like, oh, I guess that's where I'm at today. Like that one, for example, that was surprising for me right now. I wouldn't have chose that, but it's just that's where your hands go. And I think the pedal tone sort of vibe with it all, it like sort of gives a meditational sort of vibe that I really dig, right? So when it comes to the tuning and the process, I mean, that's basically it. I don't think about it. It's an open tuning. It's really a simple thing. There's your power chord. There's your suspended second or what have you. And then when it comes to gear, which I'm here to pimp because that's just the type of guy I am. Because let me tell you, lower mid-tier prog metal ain't the flush financial enterprise that one might assume. So I've been very fortunate to work with a bunch of people, you know, and it's like Framus Guitars, of course, and this is the first prototype of the signature series that comes out, I guess, at NAMM. They sent that one to them as well. There's going to be a couple of changes on it, so they've only made a few of these. Ooh, someone's going, shh. There's going to be a couple changes to this. I'm going to get rid of this contour, make it thicker, make the body a little bigger, make the headstock a little bigger. But this is basically it, and I mean, they're just perfect. And I use the Fishman pickups, and you'll see me switching back and forth between different sounds. And I worked with Fishman to make a pickup that does everything in one. Like, that's kind of my whole trip. It's usually I'll have like a telly for the clean stuff, and then like you know, something with 81s in it for the heavy stuff. So I wanted something that could do it all in one place. So this pickup gives me the opportunity of doing like a real sort of nice, you know, single coily sort of sound. And then when I flip it back to like the metal vibe, I can really do that sound. And then I use this Evertune thing here, which is wicked because it's, again, training wheels for singers. I haven't tuned this guitar in months. It's so great. And like usually it's the same thing when I'm trying to create. I hate second guessing myself, and I actually don't spend a lot of time doing so. So having a guitar that I can pick up and it's ready to go and it's always in tune has kind of changed my whole trip, right? So anyway, there's me spieling. Let's do question and answer stuff now. Yeah, yes sir.
I know you have a Moore pedal coming out.
Yeah.
This year. As far as I know, the only other Moore guy is Neil Zaza, who's also who has a signature pedal. Neil Zaza. So
yeah.
how did you get hooked up with the Moore
It was
pedal?
through Framus, actually. Hans Peter and the lady from Moore were hammered. And he came up to me and he was like, "You two are going to work together." Like, really? And he was like really like on fire. And I was like, okay. And then I talked to them, and I think the thing for me is like to endorse things without any practical application of it doesn't make any sense. You know, like when I was a kid, I remember watching these guitar magazines and the guy in the back's like, "I endorse the chord chart." You know, it's like a piece of cardboard. It's like, why? Why do you endorse the chord chart? Why do you endorse the guitar bra or whatever? It's like, so for me, when it comes to actually using things, I need to have it as some real practical application. Like these pickups do one thing for me that solves a bunch of problems. The guitars solve a bunch of problems. And the Moore pedal, when I go play acoustic guitar or go to my parents' house for Christmas and you want to, you know, bring it around, like I really like having a ton of echo. Like even now, I got this great little Echo Packs pedal for this demonstration, but it's not my trip, right? Like my trip is a delay into a reverb into a delay. And it's a real specific thing that gives me like 30 seconds of reverb without getting in the way, and I can sort of improvise with the echo. Like my whole trip is with echo. It's interacting with the past in a certain way. So the Moore thing is that it's two delays and a reverb, and you can change the configuration of them, and it doesn't black it out between the sounds. You can change the type of delays while the repeats are going, and it doesn't stop it. So it's like a big gooey ambient machine. It's like a couple $100, and the reason why I wanted to do it, other than the fact that maybe I'll get some residuals off it somewhere along the line and like go back to Panera Bread, but the reason why I wanted is when I go into an environment like this, for example, where I don't have the opportunity to have all that setup time or bring the fractals or whatever, just to have my sound and a little pedal, a version of my sound is like ideal. So I go to Shanghai in 5 weeks or something, and apparently I'm playing in a parking lot for more, so, you know, hooray. But it's really gonna be cool, and it's cheap too. It's like, you know, I asked them to really make it bulkier and make it that you could drag it behind a truck and it won't break, because I'm not very good with being careful with anything. Ask my wife. So yeah, that's gonna be coming out soon. That's really cool, man. Really cool. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So like the song Kingdom, how did you train your voice to go between like normal falsetto and then scream?
Force of will. Honestly, I mean, when we did the Casualties of Cool pledge drive, part of it was to do vocal lessons with people. And I was thinking to myself, like, oh my God, what am I going to say to these poor guys? And this one guy gets on there and he's like a voice spritzer, and he's like, me, 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 me. He's like, I don't eat tomatoes, and you know what I mean? It's like the whole thing that you're supposed to do as singers. And he's like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I just panic. But I think it's like, for me with music, I like suicidal things. I mean, when things are safe, like when people are really protected, or especially, I fucking hate prog music, man. It makes me crazy. And I'm in the scene all of a sudden. Like, we did Prog Power the other day and bummed out everybody. It was great. It was great. Because the band before was perfect, and the singer was like, wah! He's doing all that perfectly clean thing, and you know, and they got fancy clothes and the whole works, and my voice was shot because I was eating cheese and tomatoes, and you know what I mean? But I never wanted to be a singer. I mean, every singer that I worked with when I was a kid was a douche. So I decided to become that douche, right? Like, and it's funny because the psychology of singing is such that you have to rend yourself for the public. There's this real sense of having to be vulnerable in order for people to participate in it. Because if you don't open yourself, there's nothing there. It's like this empty thing. And so when it comes to singing, I was just like, well, I want to hit that note. And so I guess we'll just give it our best shot, right? And I maybe 50, 60% of the time I hit it. Like, honestly. But I had a good choir teacher. I went to a guy in LA when I did the Steve Vai project. He was like, well, you need to go to a vocal teacher. Your voice is not going to make it on tour. So I went to this guy named Roger Love in LA. I mean, the name alone, right? Roger Love. You know, I had big hair. I wonder if he's still around, but he had like, you know, the people from Heart that he taught, and like Nelson, and everybody's, you know, the pictures on the wall, these dudes like, right? And I went in, and he goes, sing for me. And I was like, Rah! And he's like, well, you're not going to be able to sustain that. Your voice is going to be gone within a couple of years. And it's 25 years later, so hooray! Don't eat tomatoes. Unless it's on pizza, then eat tons of it, right? Another question, anybody? Yes, sir.
So earlier in your spiel, you mentioned Casualties of Cool.
Yes, sir.
Brought to mind, like, in lots of moments in your quieter albums, you have a really long sort of space where not a lot happens.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of sounds like what you've been doing right here.
Totally.
But it's on a recording, so you've like committed to it creatively. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, how do you get to that conclusion?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of my process basically just involves, I don't think I was ever emotionally that astute. I think as a kid, for whatever reason, either we were taught not to express anger, or, you know, as a stiff upper lip sort of English, you know, my grandparents and everything, it was like, well, you don't express that. And any overt displays of emotion are inappropriate. And the whole family was like that. So I think a lot of it came out in sarcasm for us, which is incredibly unhealthy in hindsight, because it's just a veil of anger in a different way, right? But because when I was very young, I was able to find myself with a proclivity for music, it became everything hardwired to that. And so when I write, I just literally don't think. And a lot of people talk about meditation and all that sort of. I can't fucking meditate, man. I took the Headspace course where you're supposed to all this stuff, and I went to some hippie thing in the woods there where you sit in a chair and they're like, you know, clear your mind. I'm like, I can't do it. It's just like, oh, cows. Oh, yeah, no, I wonder what's for dinner. Yeah, but the one way that I don't think is music. And that may have been because everything got hardwired to it emotionally. So when it comes to Casualties or Strapping or like Alien or Ziltoid or Ocean Machine Terrier, any of these records, it's a reaction to trying to become actualized, I think, as a person. Try to get closer to those senses of like authentic emotion and just your own truth, whatever that is. You know, and I'm in no danger of becoming enlightened in this lifetime. But I do notice that as I get older, my ability to like really participate in like good things, like, oh, this coffee's great. Or, you know, I really do enjoy humping or whatever. It's like, but those moments are such that I think if you really participate in them, then music becomes ultimately just the exhaust of that process. You know, and I look back at a lot of these records, Casualties or any of them, and at the time you think to yourself, oh, this is an exact expression of where I am at life. And then several years later, you look at it again, you're like, well, there's only 2 good songs on there. But at the time, that's not the thing. It's just that's definitive of that moment. So you know, I choked myself up, and I just like, oh God. It's all about every time I'm down here now, all I'm aware of is the Canadianisms, man. I'm like, it's all about hanging out with their Bob. You know, we're working in the backyard on our bar at the car there. I don't think about it. And in fact, right now I'm in a position where I'm trying to avoid allowing my mind to become obsessed with music, because whatever I do, I become viciously, unhealthily obsessed with the process, with the theme. And, you know, I'm a little tired of it right now. That being said, I'm starting the symphony in November, so hooray. I can't wait. Yes, sir? Anybody? Yes, sir?
I got a question. There's that one song at the end of Transcendence. You say that it was a lot easier than doing Z2.
Yeah.
What you meant by that. This was kind of the album.
I didn't want to do Z2. I didn't want to do that record. I was overworked, and I was really taxed, and there was like death in the family, and like our cat got eaten, and like all this, like seriously, it was fucking brutal, man. Like, you know, and it's like kids, and I'd been on tour for 2 years, and then all of a sudden label management and people involved with my world creatively are saying, you know, and if you don't maintain the momentum at this point, it's going to be very difficult for you to actualize these other things that you want to do, specifically the symphony or Casualties or all that. And really all I wanted to do with Z2 was make the puppet show. I just really wanted to spend the whole thing on making elaborate puppets. And I did. If you go on YouTube, the ZTV thing, not the original like Grody sock puppet. Grody, I can't believe I used that word. Yeah, gag with a spoon. But the actual puppet show is all I wanted to do, and it was so much fun. Actually, Zim was the one that did the puppet show. This is Zim, everybody, right? So he's been doing these daily video updates, and he did the Transcendence documentary, and he also did all the Ziltoid puppet shows as well. So, and that's what I wanted to do with Z2. But in order to rationalize doing those puppet shows, I had to have music. And so I started writing the music, and then the label was like, well, you just did Epicloud, and we can't sell this like farting ball sack stuff, like, you know? And I was like, okay, well, can I do it if I make a bunch of pop songs? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, all right, no problem. So I started writing Sky Blue, and then halfway through it, I was just like, I can't just barf this shit out. This sucks. And now I've committed to it. What am I gonna do? And then there's all of a sudden death, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll write a bunch of fucking super, like, you know, uplifting yet miserable songs. And then that started coming out in the way it did, and then the workload of it all became so much that it was just out of control. And then as well, the pledge drive happened. And I remember one very specific instance of having to try and participate in the pledge drive. And one of those things was singing happy birthday to people. So people would give me, you know, my name is John, and it's going to be Steven's birthday, and he's 36, and he likes kittens. So on one hand, I got my wife calling me about like her mom dying, and it's like super brutal, you know what I mean? And then our cat got all fucked up, and it was like brutal. And I was like, oh my God, babe, I'm sorry, I'll be right back. Anyway, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Steven and his cat. Happy birthday to you. Anyway, I'm sorry, I know it's fucked. What are we gonna do, you know? And in the midst of it, I'm trying to put together like, you know, Ziltoid and all this stuff. And then the same problem with the Ziltoid record is all of a sudden my kid's 9 and he's got a bunch of 9-year-old friends. And my whole thing with Ziltoid in the beginning is he says cunt a lot and he's an idiot and like, and all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden my son loves him. He's like, what does Ziltoid do today? And I'm like, something horrible. So what are we gonna do? Okay, well, and so all of a sudden we heard about the moon of Saturn, Titan, and it had a methane ocean. I was like, well, obviously there's creatures that live in the methane and they look like little asses, of course. Like, poozers is what the name he gave them. And I was like, right, buddy, they're poozers, that's right. And then, you know, Chris Jericho and all the Captain Spectacular shit, and then he had to die, and then my son was super bummed out about Captain Spectacular dying, and it was like, by the end of it, it became, and this is the thing about records, I guess long story long, is the purpose of the record ended up being, in hindsight, that it was me against myself. Like Ziltoid being this manifestation of the ego or the insecurities against the party that's trying to battle the, you know, that sort of self-conscious and self-deprecating thing that comes with it. So the whole theme of the record ended up being this dual record, and if you see in the artwork, it's like the Ziltoid army and then the DTP army, and so there was something good that came out of it. But as a document of a time, it was really accurate, but as a time itself, it fucking sucked. So did that answer anything? Or I just ramble, I just take it for a ride. Yes, sir?
In regards to your record Transcendence, pretty much what you just said about how like Z2 was kind of like, well, Ziltoid as a whole was kind of like you versus like your ego stuff, I want to call it that. What was the overall like writing process that went into it, the ultimate like purpose of the record?
Of Z2?
No, Transcendence.
Well, I had the fortune of writing a book last year, and at first, when they presented me the idea, I was like, well, this is a cash grab, clearly, because I'm in my mid-40s, like, what am I going to say? I don't have any rock and roll stories. It's not like, well, back in '84 when I was snorting ants off of hookers' tits. It was like, it was none of that. It was like, well, I've been married for 25 years, and you know what I mean? I like how it's made, and you know what I mean? It's like, none of this stuff really makes for like great copy, right? So my first thought was like, well, you know, we need to keep the boat floating if I'm going to take a year and a half off. So we had a ghostwriter in the sky, and then it was, I read it back and I was like, you can't have your own trip interpreted through other people's words. So I started writing with my grade 12 creative writing skills, and it took me a year of going through it, and to have it as something that is ultimately of value required it being open and vulnerable enough to really make a point out of it. And the point for the book ended up becoming about the process. How does this process work? Would be advice for people who want to do the same thing, like to be an independent musician and keep the salaries. And someone's humping in the other room. And it's like, you know, but through it as well, when you objectively put your past down, you're able to see patterns emerge. And one of the patterns that I really found to be troubling, because you see it like, oh, I did that and this happened, and I did it again and this happened, is control. And a lot of the control for me, I think, in hindsight, is just because I was such an insecure teen, you know, believe it or not, that when I finally got a modicum of success doing something musically, it's like everything got hardwired to it all of a sudden, and my identity became so heavily invested in what I did as opposed to who I was, that almost to have music separate from me meant like a death. Like I didn't exist other than in relationship to my work, which is absurd, right? That's just doesn't make any sense. So with Transcendence, the idea was to view the need for control as being something to dig into. The process is always going to be the same, and it was even with the record, but the way that it went about, the way that it was articulated included other people and other people's opinions and things production-wise, engineering-wise, mastering-wise, that gave me a perspective on what I was doing that allowed it to be better than where I am with this.
Would you say that's more of like a free approach to it, like you're not kind of all over the place kind of deal?
Well, it's a theme. My connection to music in general is I describe that process of you're just in a dark room and you're looking to get out, whatever that out is, like end of your life or whatever. But as you're sort of poking around the room, you find these like shapes, and then you just feel them out, and then you manage to put a light on it, and you're like, oh, I guess that was Alien. Oh, I guess that was the Hummer. I guess that was Teria. None of them are identities as much as just like a hypothesis in hopes that, as opposed to defining you, you can strip away what you aren't, right? And I think that Transcendence is probably rooted in control in a lot of ways, like, spirituality being such a fundamental part of my trip, yet no interest whatsoever in religion and, all these sorts of things. It's like, how do you get over it? How do you get over yourself, ultimately? And I think that's what Transcendence ended up being, and the analogy for that is letting go some of the control of the creative process, right? I like words. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Happy birthday, Nick.
Oh, thank you, sir. So, on Transcendence, you mentioned, like you was touching upon, that this time you kind of, for the first time, you let other people kind of take control, and like other people like mastered and did the drums and stuff. Do you think that's an approach you'll take next time, or you go back to being creator Devin?
Well, I mean, I wonder what the flags for that would look like. A potato and a dick. That'd be pretty good. No, but no, it's a good question, and I think ultimately there's a time and a place for both. And I think, to be devil's advocate, it's not solely the best interest for someone who has been born with the ability to have a vision, such as me, to give up control. And I didn't give up control of the vision, for example, on this one. But, a lot of it, as well as its relationships. We were talking about this on the way down. It's music, and everybody's got their identity invested in all this. But ultimately, these are other humans, right? These are people that have a whole lot of other experiences and things to offer that, if everybody's on the same team, then it doesn't make any sense to not, compromise. It's like marriage. We've been married, my wife and I have been married for so many years, and it's not because I get to do what I want. You know what I mean? It's because we find a way to incorporate each other's strengths and become a team, right? And in the future, with DTP, if it continues, then yeah, it'll continue like that. But when it comes to Symphony or any of the other projects, each one of them specific. Casualties Are Cool, for example, that's just Che and I, now it's just a matter of that discussions that we have together, and then it just turns into this sort of evil music, right? And with the Symphony, that's just gonna be me. I haven't been let off the leash in so many years, man. And this Transcendence record is actually a great representation of that, because everything I do that follows a record is typically the opposite. Like Ghost and Deconstruction was a reaction to each other. So I think the amount of control that I demonstrated, if I may be so bold, with this Transcendence record will be thrown completely out the window with this Symphony. And it's going to be an unbelievably traumatic battle thing about sexuality from a male perspective. And it's just going to be just tons of men killing each other with their penises with war music. Seriously. And then these massive, vaginas in the sky, just Ralph and worms on them and all this, And it's going to be the whole idea of sex being this thing that's just such a big part of, the lizard mind. But ultimately, when you take it from the point of view of, what it means from a different vantage point without a body, it's just this horror, right? And then it's going to be so brutal. One scene where this guy ends up, and it's serious music, too, with, an orchestra, 100-person orchestra, 100-person choir, just a real opera, and guy kills his brother by fucking him up the ass, and then all the serious, and the veins on his penis come out, and they all turn into faces of his parents, and they're screaming, and it's yeah. So for that, I mean, I don't want any help. I don't need any help with that. But I think that's the thing, is it's one thing reacts to the other, and I'm in this crazy position of being able to do that. It's the places that we're talking about doing this Symphony are stupid, and it's great. It's huge stuff. And the fact that I went to LA recently because they were trying to convince me that I needed to write a pop song, right? So I went down there, wrote it, and it just did not work. And lost a couple friends. But there's a part of me that as soon as that was over, that experience was over, it's like, I'm gonna write a fucking cock symphony. And it's gonna be like, and we're gonna play it with the best musicians on the planet, with the best orchestras on the planet in a massive arena, and fuck all y'all. Yeah. But in order to facilitate that, doing this sort of DTP thing helps as well, because I do like it, and it's a healthy situation. It's not a toxic group of dudes. And, you know, it's getting more popular. Like what we're doing on this run, it's going really well, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Cock Symphony. Yes, sir.
How soon can we expect a Framus signature shape?
Well, this, a Framus dick shape, do you say? Well, I mean, I don't know, buddy. No, you know, the thing with Framus as well is it's interesting. It's like, I had done a signature guitar with Peavy prior, and my relationship with them was really cool. They're nice guys, and they really tried their best to do it. But it just, my parameters for anything are really, I don't like to compromise on the vision. I'm happy to compromise on the ways to achieve that vision, and there is a dramatic difference, in my opinion, between those two things. But when I have something in my mind, that objective needs to be hit somehow. So with Framus, I'm just like, okay, can I do this? And they're like, yep. Okay, can I have lasers? Yep. Can I have a smoke machine? Yep. And I was like, okay, can I have two? You know, and it's the same thing. It's like, you know, even with the pickups, I remember all the people that I've been working with in the past in terms of sounds, they're like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And I'm like, well, I have a very binary connection to music, and I don't think that's based in schizophrenia as much as just boredom. I do one thing to the exclusion of all others, and then when I'm finished that, the only thing that makes any sense for me is to go in the opposite direction. So I want to be able to represent two things at one time. And that's, you know, to have two distinct... Not on this one, I'm compressed to shit. But I mean, it's like to have two distinct sounds in one guitar, and to have one guitar do it all is ultimately the most efficient use of my time, and I'm into efficiency, right? Another question? Yes, sir.
How'd you get your space boot?
There's some kids that were in danger. A couple of ladies had to step up. You know what it is last October, I made a decision that I was like, okay, I'm in my mid-40s. I have to get in shape, and not to be strong, but just not to be like worse than I was. So every day, you know, we exercise, and we got a thing. We got a juicer on the road, and we exercise. It's great, and I really enjoy it. Like every day, you know, Ryan and I work, and Dave does Krav Maga, and I do it with him, and you know, Zim's there as well. So anyway, the other day, there was a person in a gym. Where was that? Edmonton? Saskatoon? And they were like, hey, come to our gym. You can exercise here. So I went there, and it was great. We had an exercise all good. And these two huge dudes are like, bet you none of you faggots can lift one of these tires. And I was like, fucking right, I can lift a tire. Fuck you. I'll fucking lift the fuck out of that tire. So I was like, yeah! And the muscle in my back and my leg just went doink. But I still flipped it. And then I walked away like, fuck yeah, right? And now I've been walking around with this stupid thing, so, pardon me? Everybody knows. But you know, the funny thing though, is if you're trying to glean a lesson out of everything, which I think is ultimately what you should be doing musically or otherwise, like exercising is great. It's great. Humans should exercise because holy crap, I got a job to do. I got to try and, you know, withstand the rigors of being in a stink tube for fucking 8 weeks at a time. So exercising, good, right? Doing it to try and prove to dudes that, nice guys, that are huge, massive chunks of dude flipping tires, that your little skinny ass could do the same thing is rooted in your ego and probably not your best move. Anyway, boot. It's a boot time. Yeah. Terrible. Yes, sir.
You've had the opportunity to work with some absolute stellar vocalists over the past couple of years. Is there anybody on your list of collaborations you'd like to work with?
I just want to play bass. That's what I want to do, honestly. And there's a bunch of buddies of mine that are in other bands, but it's so much when you're on the road is pillow talk. You know, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. You're with some dude in the other band. You're like, dude, we should totally do a band. Oh yeah, dude, we'll do a band. We'll call it Ointment, and it will have like in the backstage, it'll all be white and 72 degrees all the time. Fuck yeah, dude. You know what I mean? And then you never talk again. And then they go back to Sweden or wherever it is, and you go back to Canuck land, and then you see each other 4 years later, and then you have the same conversation. It's even worse when you're drinking. You know what I mean? It's been 10 years since I've had a drink, but at the time, you used to sit in the back lounge with each other and be like, dude, bro, when we play, man, this is gonna be fucking awesome, man. But that being said, there's a bunch of people that I talk to, and we're trying to put together like a band where I get to play bass and sing and do these sorts of things, right? And in terms of singers, I mean, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great singers, but honestly, when I was 15, I fell in love with that Enya record, Watermark. Like, I really did love that record. Like, the rest of the stuff that she did, the was all really flowery, but Watermark was a dark record. It was great. I loved it. And then I remember thinking, man, I want to have that with metal, right? Which was not really a popular sentiment and still remains so. So anytime I do have an opportunity to work with another singer, I don't really want to work with a guy because I can do that. And I really love the sound of strong female voices. So I seek that up, and I've been lucky enough to come into contact with two specific, Che and Annika, who are just, both of them are just like brilliant. And as singers, just, I don't have to do anything. I can just kind of sit in the back and like rock. And we went down to Dunlop last week. Che and we did something for the Casualty singing. It's so good, man. And it comes out in a couple of weeks, and it's just, I can't wait to not sing, so I can just eat tomatoes, just with spite while I'm looking at them. Listen, what's up? Just go to bed screaming just to ruin my voice on purpose. It's like, Yes, sir.
You know the Framus meat with the smoke machine and the lasers will ever be released to the public?
Oh my God. I got the price on that. It was so obscene that I was just like, you gotta be kidding me, man. It's so great. It showed up on a pallet in Vancouver. It was like, literally, I had a pickup truck, like a Ford Ranger. I couldn't fit it in the back. It was like on an angle. It was so good. That guitar weighs 23 pounds. Yeah. So that's why when we did the Royal Albert Hall show, you only see me with it for one song. And I'm like all hunched over with it because it's got like remote controlled fog in each wing, and it's got lasers and 7-string, and it's like a 49-inch scale or whatever, and it's got Evertune, and it's the coolest guitar ever made. Pardon me?
Do you ever actually use it anymore?
Oh, it's in Europe, so we've got like a rig that stays in Europe and a rig that stays here. I bring it to blues jams every now and then. You know what I mean? Just turn on the lights. Oh, I didn't know you guys noticed these. Oh, No, you guys play late. I'll just do rhythm. Did you have a question there?
Yeah. So before you were talking about like sitting in the woods and like writing guitar stuff, but as far as vocals go, like how do you come up with lyrics?
I try and just say what's on my mind in tune, honestly. Because I'm not a poet. Like, I'm a poet, and I didn't even think I was one. But so a lot of the times when it comes to lyrics, it's just a matter of vomiting it. And then, like on the new record, there's a song called Secret Sciences. And I woke up just in a shitty mood, and I just read what I wrote first thing in the morning. And in the same way as the music is automatic, I think the lyrics even more so. A lot of times, like Effervescent, Awake, like just tons of songs happen while I'm asleep. So I'll have a song rolling through my head in a dream, and I'll wake up and I'll be like, what song is that? Oh, it's not a song yet. Oh, fuck, I gotta do this. So what I do is I'll pick up my phone, and then I put on the voice recorder, and I'll be like, and then it's a C, and then it goes to the higher note, and then it's, and then I send it to myself. And then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, what the fuck? And then you read it, and you're just like, oh, I guess I'll go do that. And then it's like, and lyrically as well. Like there's a song I wrote the other day, something about a snake, and it's like I wrote this whole lyrical passage that was super dark, and I just sort of mumbled it into the phone, and then I transcribed it in the morning, and away you go, right? So sometimes it happens like that. Other times it's laborious, but really, I would say, in speaking it out loud, the most basic way that I write lyrics is to I take the syllables and I adhere it to the riffs in a basic way. So say the riff is like, I might just record myself going, and then I'll listen back to it, and I'll listen to what came naturally, and I'll transcribe it like, soon you'll know the way, and I haven't known. And then you just keep refining it by what you think you said, and then turning it into sentences, right? And then it often surprises you. You're just like, oh, I'm gay, or whatever, right? Yes, sir.
I remember as we're looking to go into recording, there's so many things you have to think about. What are some just things in terms of maybe recording drums or guitars, or just certain preparations you make before you go into it?
Well, in the past, it's been done in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes I'll go into a recording completely unprepared, and that sort of aspect of unpreparedness is what contributes to the energy. But I think you probably are best suited to just have a real solid idea of the identity of what it is that you're trying to do. I didn't realize until somebody clued me into it earlier that there's something called synesthesia, which I think is how I write. So for what I mean by that is, to me, like a 2 is a circle and it's blue, and a 3 is a triangle and it's dark green, and a D is dark blue, and a G is dark green, and an A is red, and a B is orange, and the shapes and it all is one thing, right? Like a smell is a certain shape and whatever, right? So when I go into the studio, I have a clear objective of what it is that I want to feel at the end of it. And then when it comes to recording the individual instruments, it's all kind of tied into it. It's like an archaeological dig. You see something sticking out from the dirt, and you're just trying to excavate it, and in hopes that it's a pterodactyl and not like a turkey, right? But it's, on this recording, what I found as well is, I'm 44. I never learned how to engineer. I did it just because it's the same way that I learned how to sing. Is like I needed to. I didn't have the money to get an engineer, right? In the beginning, I worked with a guy, Daniel Bergstrand, who did City and Ocean Machine. It was great because he was really good, right? But from there, I had to do it myself, and so I learned it, but unhappily. So on the new record, I just found somebody who was much younger than me and didn't have 30 years of a click track going dong, 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 dong. So I gotta, in my frequency spectrum, there's a huge cavern at 3.5K, right? And that helps as well, Oh, there's the answer to the question. Get someone better than you to engineer the drums. Yeah, I was Nolly on the new one. Man, he's good. Holy crap. And it was and a real gentleman too. So when I was trying to express my my objectives with the music, it was easy for me to say, I want it to be like this. And him to say, well, you might want to consider turning the guitars up. I'm like, no. Everything has to be the same level. That's how I hear it. Nothing sticks out. That's the whole point. But then at the end of this record, for example, 3 independent people sent me mails. The label, management, 4, Nolly, and the mastering engineer. They're like, we know that you want it to be this way, but we're losing it. It's starting to turn into another one of your records where it's just this kind of wall of sound and this kind of gushy thing. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, please know that we're not trying to compromise the vision. We just think that it would be cool if we, made it rock a little more. And I'm like, it's supposed to be a symphony. So what I did on this record was I said to Nolly, I said, okay, we got one more day. I want you to make the changes. Don't show it to me. Send it to the mastering engineer. Then I hung up the phone. I thought I was going to Ralph. I was just like, oh, God, I never. But then when I heard it back, I was like, wow, everybody actually wanted the same thing. And it's just, talk about letting go a bit of control, to have these people who you like and you trust and they like and trust you make these decisions for me at the end was just like a shocker. I was like, holy shit, I thought I knew everything. Yeah, just, I don't know. I'm not a very good engineer. Turn it up until it goes red and then, put a whole bunch of it on there. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I was gonna ask sort of about how you deal with your like Phil Spector on crack kind of
Yeah.
multi-track.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about hair. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about the wall of sound. It's like, that's often what people say. It's like, Deb, you got this wall of sound thing that you do. And a lot of it for me, though, is, and I was joking earlier about acid, or was I? But I mean, ever since I was a kid, the moments that I've had of spiritual significance, whatever they are, like seeing the Dark Crystal for the first time, or like, death or birth, or nature or the universe or whatever, it's all implies to me a sense of awe that is I just want to capture. And I mean, I've got my bias, right? White, middle class, male Canadian guy, right? That's filters. Wherever you're from, whatever your bias is, your trip is going to come out with that. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is, right? So with the wall of sound thing, I'm just trying to achieve that sense of like, holy fuck, that throughout my life I've felt, and I can't do it, and I'll never be able to do it. So it results in this really oppressive sound, and that's always what it is. Like you listen to Infinity, and it's just like static with like 400 tracks in there. That wasn't my intention. My intention is to have an immersive experience. So each thing that I do is trying to get closer to that. Transcendence is a little closer, but it's still not there. So the next thing I'm doing with the symphonies is all going to be in surround. And I went to Belgium recently, and there's a studio there that we're going to use, and it's 21.1, which is 21 speakers. You can have... The idea is to not make it sound like a wall of sound. The idea is to make it like you're looking at a fractal, and it's just wherever you listen, it goes on. Like wherever you put your attention, it goes, it goes, it goes, it goes. And that's the goal, right? Not to make something that people are just like, holy fuck, dude, turn that off, man, That's my dad. When I put my music on for my dad, he's like, what the hell are you doing? Why do you use so much goddamn echo? I mean, it's like, that's his thing every time. He's like, turn your vocals up and turn down the echo. What the hell's wrong with you, right? Yes, sir?
Over the years, you're writing so much material. Do you ever hit a writer's block? And if you do, what do you do to get out of it?
I hit writer's blocks all the time.
How do you ever pull yourself out of it? So
I don't write.
produce again?
I don't write. And that sounds flippant, but it's the truth. It's like if it's not ready to come out, it's not ready to come out. That's what the problem with Z2 was. I really had to force it. And it was like, ultimately, I got something of value out of that for me. Even the point of forcing it during that period was contributed to its value. But if you have nothing to write, it's because nothing's ready to come out yet. It's like, what was that new, you were talking about the Nick Drake's new album? Nick Cave, yeah, because apparently his son killed himself, and it's like super brutal. It was an accident, right? So when these things happen, it just propels itself. Well, yeah, and I think that looking for inspiration is also a little weird. It's like you can get out of your comfort zone and hope that it occurs, but I just think that the best music for us as individuals is the stuff that comes out without any ulterior motive. It's like not like, oh, we're trying to write a song, or did you see that thing about the millennial whoop? Did you see that? Yeah. Isn't that sick? It's sick. And so basically there's these patterns that happen in pop music, and it becomes like it's a science. Like when I went down to LA to try and write this stupid pop song, it's a science. Like they analyze music to see what is currently selling, which chord changes, which tempos, what works best in the summer, what works best in the winter. And that millennial whoop thing was this thing, or whatever, and there's tons of songs that used it, and it's the same interval, the same thing, and because it sold, it became like all of this last year there was like 15 pop songs that used that, and every time it was like bank, but I think it's one of two things. It's either you write for the sake of it being an industry like that where you're making money and hand over fist, and you're selling Coke at that point, right? Or you just wait for it to show up, and you're in a good mood and you feel like writing a song. I mean, those are the ones that's ultimately going to get there, because I think even if you did make millions and millions of dollars making that shit, I don't think that when you get older you'd be really happy. I think you'd be stuck being Axl Rose or stuck being Britney Spears, and you can't take a shit without people like putting a camera up your ass, right? Like, where'd that come from? Is it? Yes, sir.
So with Transcendence, you let the other guys in the band contribute more so to the writing process. And I noticed, at least from my perspective, Transcendence sounds dynamically quite a bit different musically than, say, Red Cloud or Sky Blue. And I felt like Sky Blue and Red Cloud started to sound a little similar, particularly those two.
Very much.
How did Transcendence sound different to you, and how did that different writing process, allowing the other guys, how does that?
The way that this process happened was really, I wrote 40 to 60 songs, somewhere in between there, and I presented them all to the guys, and we tried them all. And then the ones that seemed to resonate with us were the ones that we worked on. Failure was the first song that we wrote together, and we wrote that one like a traditional band, and it's a great song. The other stuff I wrote it, and then we went through it. And this time I had the opportunity to articulate to these guys who are all very different than me. It's like I say, okay, this is why it works like this. This is why it gets complicated here. It's not because we're trying to make complicated music. It's because the intention of this song is supposed to document an emotional transition between tentative connection to love, and then fear, and then anger. And as it devolves into the anger, that's why that happens. And then there's confusion, which is why it's complicated. And then ultimately it's supposed to emerge in a place of triumph, which is why it goes major. It's not, oh, and then it gets complicated, and then we all do sweep arpeggios for 3 minutes. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's supposed to, it's the theme that's important. And so by being able to articulate to the guys, it was much more efficient for them to say, oh, I get it. Okay, well then why don't we do this if this is what you're trying to do? While you're playing that riff, I'll do an inversion. And that's how the writing ended up happening. For example, like Storm Bending, I remember the midsection, I was like, it needs to have a complicated guitar part in that part, but I didn't have the patience. I was doing a bunch of other stuff, and I was like, it has to be complicated. These are the notes, these are the tonalities, but I don't want to write something complicated right now. So everything I'm doing just sounds like Thunderstruck right now, right? So I said to Dave and Mike, I was like, there's the notes, there's the chords, make something complicated. And so they came back with something. I was like, great, saved me a ton of work. I don't have, and it's wicked. And and now and I don't know what the fuck they're playing. And it's great, because when they play it live now, I'm like, I would have not done that, but I wanted it to sound like that. So it became this real learning thing for me. It's like, well, you delegate, just be able to communicate what it is that you're trying to achieve, and under that model, you're able to get the strengths of people musically contributing to something that is your theme and is your vision ultimately, but it's no longer all you. And it's not like I played Dungeons and Dragons, because I totally didn't. Actually, I was a dungeon master until puberty hit, and then I had all my characters like try and fuck the orcs. It's like, roll the 20-sided die, yeah, you get 14 blowjobs, come on. And then my buddy killed my cleric or something, and I was like, I hate you. And we never talked again. It's great. But it was like, but in Dungeons and Dragons, the whole idea was that it's not nerdy, whatever. The whole idea was to make a team, so everybody's strengths and weaknesses. You got one guy who's maybe a wizard, and he's like able to cast spells, but one shot to the gonads wipes him out. And so the other guy, he maybe can't cast spells, but he's really good at like protecting his gonads, right? So you get across the board, everybody's strengths and weaknesses make a strong team. And for a strong team, you can't have like 15 gonad protectors, or else you just get oh. That's the style. So basically, it's like, so with this, it was just taking everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and it took a lot. The learning curve for me was, how do you articulate what it is that you're trying to achieve to people that fundamentally process information different than you? And that was hard because I don't want to make concessions for people, you know? Like, and then after a while, I'm like, oh, no wonder you guys think I'm a fucking lunatic. It's like Ryan, drummer. He's just like, well, where's it his? On the 3 or is it on the 5? And I'm like, it's on the part that's round. You know? And he's like, I don't understand. I'm like, well, then we can't be friends. You know what I mean? Like, yes, sir.
Kind of building off the same point, like how do you incorporate like other people's or your vision without offending other people's?
You don't. Well, I mean, luckily I'm in a situation where the hierarchy for this was determined early on as being Devin Townsend projects. So they're very respectful of the fact that ultimately I'm going to be able to have the final say, right? But it's conflict. That's just a big thing. And it's like learning how to not only engage in conflict, but also recognize that a lot of time the reactions from people have got nothing to do with you. And it's the same with me. It's like these guys would very carefully come up to me like at a next rehearsal and be like, Dev, you know, that song that you've been working on, we're wondering maybe if like the midsection should go twice. And after a week, I was like, yeah, it's a good idea. But right out of the gate, I'm like, oh yeah, twice, that sounds great, perfect, great. Great, no, it's a good idea. No, I understand, it's great, it's fucking fine. You know, so my reaction to their suggestion, which was very careful, is just rooted in me, like, don't tell me what to do. And that ultimately gets a band or like a marriage, anything, it goes nowhere. So it's the process, and this is what's interesting about Transcendence, is each record is about the process. And that right there, that little interaction example, is what the process was. Because ultimately, my goals, not only as a musician, but as a person, is to become more actualized, to become happier with myself, more at peace with myself or whatever. And that's clearly, as a result of the book and as a result of all these things, a stumbling block. If your reaction to people's critiques or suggestions is rooted in like, don't tell me what to do, I mean, that's as far as you're gonna go. And I've gone as far as I can go with this. Like the next steps for me require like big steps, right? So that was what Transcendence was about. Transcendence. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, when you take, like, you're on the Transcendence tour now, when you take the record out on the road, how do you decide what songs you guys want to play off the record versus all the old Devin Townsend songs and whatever, versus like what the crowd might want to hear? Because I remember you talking about, I ran into you and I was like, you guys can play Smith Wave, and you're like, well, no, that's not what would work in this set. Like, how do you like take the creative process of making the record and then kind of sustain that on the road?
Well, it's a huge thing, and it's frustrating as well, because I looked at my back catalog, and at this point I'm rolling almost 30 records, including the live stuff and all this stuff. It's like 30 records, dude. That's like, a bunch of them are like double records. It's like stupid. So how do you distill that into a 75-minute show that like pimps your current wares, shows people that you know, are still good, fun time, and, you know, be able to be like, hey, we're sensitive, and then also be like, yeah, but we're really heavy, you know what I mean? It's like trying to get all that working in one place is a crapshoot. So this time as well, and this is much to my chagrin, I asked the band to help. And they did a really fucking good job. And it pisses me off. Because the last tour, I was like, I'm choosing the set list here. And then halfway through the show, I'm like, where's everybody going? You know what I mean? It's like, so again, it's like with these guys, like, what should we play? And they're like, well, we should do a little bit from Motion Machine. We should do a bunch from the new record. We should end with a song that you haven't ended with before. We should not start with a song that you've started with before. And I'm like, out of my comfort zone, not into it. But it works. But it's never going to be easy, right? Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you're before I know you're talking about like working with other people and with the setlist thing for the Retinal Circus. How did all of that come to be? Because that's
I had a dream. And I had the crux of the dream was the very last song, Little Pig, where Beav and Ryan were playing video games and smoking a bong in a living room, and that was going to be on stage. Like, there's some sort of metaphor there, right? But it's like They were going to be on stage playing video games, smoking a bong, and there was going to be a bunch of women that came out in lumberjack outfits with beards singing. And so we made that happen. And we had one day to do it. So we hired this circus that were so confused, man. It was great. And then, and I had this lady make this huge vagina, right? Like with googly eyes and all this sort of stuff. And she was just like, but she's so into it, right? And then, and we had to get like a bunch of like little cars and like aliens and like a huge dick and like all this stuff, right? And it was like, and we had one day to pull it off. There's actually a documentary online, like the making of the Retinal Circus, and it shows the chaos that goes into it and the utter confusion of Area 51, who were the circus performers. But, again, force of will, man. It's the same as the singing thing. It's like, I want to do this. We have an opportunity to do it, so let's do it, right? Learning how to fail efficiently is the best solution to any of these creative problems, in my opinion. You and then you.
You talked about wanting to play bass earlier.
Yeah.
I heard you say before,
Well, I became a dad. When I first started music, I had no idea that in my mid-40s I would become introverted, other than a situation like this where I'm emotionally absolutely absent. You know what I mean? It's like, not absolutely, but as a defense mechanism, you gotta be, right? Or else you feel like a total tool, right? So, but when I was a kid, I was like, when I'm older, man, I want all that validation all the time. And then we have kids, and then I got sober 10 years ago. There's no drugs, no drink, and again, I've been married for so long, man. And it's like, and I find myself that in a support role, I'm really good, and I'm really happy. And I understand what it means to support, and I like to help. And bass is great for that. Plus, most of the time, bass is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the music thing, right? What is it? I'm sorry. You know what's funny? As soon as it was coming out of my mouth, I thought, I bet you there's somebody here that's going to be bummed by that. As soon as that was coming out of my mouth. So what I was going to say instead is, it's like bass becomes the kind of bald Canadian of the band, right? There we go. But I think it's like within it's funny, you can't, oh my God, sorry. Beef? So bass becomes the middle-aged bald Canadian with a small penis named Devin of the band. But as a result of that as well, you find there's a lot of people that like don't play it well. They're like, I want to be a bass player, or I want to be a guitar player, but I actually kind of sucked. But my buddies wanted me to hang out because I always brought the PA or whatever, right? And it's like, and then as a producer, when I track bass players, the amount of shitty bass players is crazy, and it's such an awesome instrument that all of a sudden I keep going, just give me that fucking thing, right? And he's like, dun, dun, dun. And I just love Massive Attack. Like, that's what I want to do for bass. It's like the best bass solo is you stop for 5 beats, and the ass falls out of it, and then you go back in, right? It's like, but I like being in a support role. I think it just really works for me, right? So, yeah. Your question?
How'd you go about doing the Accept cover for Fast as a Shark? I know it's supposed to be
Oh, yeah. Well, I met Wolf through Framus, and he's a bald German guy, so we have the bald in common, right? But no, I really like him and Peter too. Wolf is a guitar player for Accept, like for the 80s band Accept, and we had to do a signing together, and it was me and Wolf sitting beside Robert Trujillo from Metallica, and everybody was going to Robert and then looking at us and going, and walking past us. And Wolf yelled out, and this is where I thought, oh, we should hang out. He yells out, "Don't you know who I used to be?" And I thought, and I remember thinking, we should hang out, dude. This is fucking great. So I played bass on his solo record, but he couldn't get the rights for the song, so he couldn't release it. So Metal Hammer asked me if I could do a cover tune. So I said, well, Wolf, why don't we do Fast as a Shark, and you can do the guitar. And I talked to Frederick, who's Meshuggah guitar player. I talked to him. We talk every day. So I was like, he was a huge Accept fan. So I was like, well, why don't you play the solo? And then Yeah, so that's kind of how that came about. And it was cool, man. I mean, Wolf's awesome, man. He's great. Really good guy. Funny dude. Yeah. Couple more questions, and then we'll do other stuff. Yes, sir.
Getting to Transcendence again, with the bonus disc, was there ever intention of releasing that as a separate entity, or was it always going to be?
Well, I mean, I write so much. I write constantly, and a lot of it's shit, but it's like, I write it anyway. It's like if I have an idea, I just get it out, and I get it out as articulately as possible, because in the past, I used to make like cliff notes for myself and say, well, I'll come back to this and do it later, but then you never do, you know? And it's like, so I write quickly, and I write really extravagantly when it comes to demos, and then I've got like a whole score of really, you know, relatively well-produced songs. And the reason why I've done that in the past is when I'm presenting it to either the label or the band, if it's not close enough to the original vision for them to understand why it is that you're writing it, then you have to explain yourself, right? And as a result of that, I got a ton of songs. And in the past, what would happen is I just wouldn't release it. I'd be like, oh, I'll use this for the next record or whatever. But once the time passes in which those sorts of songs are relevant, I never think about them again. So I just want to get them out. So like on Transcendence, we did like the double record, and there's like 4 songs for Japan, and there's 3 songs for Germany, and there's like iTunes. There's a shitload of songs, right? But I mean, I'd rather just purge it than have them stick around, right? Yeah. You had a question there, bud?
Yeah, I really like the Ween cover at the end of Transcendence.
Same.
Have they been like big influence to you?
Oh my God, dude, there was about 4 years there where all I listened to was Ween. It's just, I just loved them, man. And it's like, and I talked to one of the guys on Twitter, you know what I mean? But it's much less, I remember seeing them live, and it was so great. And they self-destructed in Vancouver too, which was awesome, right? But that song, I remember, the reason we did that one is because with the band, everybody's so different, you know, like Ryan really likes like progressive stuff, and, you know, and Dave really likes, you know, ambient stuff, and Mike likes pop stuff, and Beav likes Kiss, you know what I mean? But it's like, one thing that we all kind of had in common was we all thought Ween was really cool. And I remember hearing that song, Transdermal Celebration, which is a cover we did on Transcendence, and I remember thinking, oh, that's one of the greatest songs of all times. It's one of the greatest songs of all times. And so we tried to do it accurately, and I don't think it's as good as theirs, but it was like, for me, I just liked the fact that we were able to pull it off, right? A couple more questions, and then we'll do really fun stuff. Just you wait. It's gonna be like, yes, sir.
Are there any newer bands you're getting into?
Yeah. On my time off, man, I listen to all that shit that you hear on the PA while you're getting your feet rubbed. You know, like some hippie huffing into a flute. You're like, you know, some piano, ding, ding, ding. I really like quiet, atmospheric, down-tempo, chill out sort of stuff without vocals, right? So when it comes to metal, I mean, I stay up on it, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, what did I hear? I like, you know, Cattle Decapitation's really cool, and, you know, and a Sumac's new record's really good, and, you know, what was that one I heard? Architects, their new record's good, and, you know, Gojira, of course, and Meshuggah, and, like, you know, and Periphery's new one's really good, and Rivers of Nahil is really good, and, you know, but I mean, I like, if I'm gonna listen to it, I like it brutal, but it's, I don't find myself seeking it out nearly as much as I used to. When I get home, it's like I either want to hear nothing or, again, you know, that guy, you know, flute dude that you'd hate to hang out with. You know what I mean? He's the same guy that, like, dumps into a vat in his backyard and turns it into meat. You know what I mean? Like, did you see that? You see that guy doing that? And he looks so humorless about it, too. I'm like, dude, you're shitting in a vat. He's like, well, because the earth is going downhill, I'd like to recycle, and I have my vegan diet. He's like, the next thing is him taking a crunch in his backyard, and he turns it into meat. And we're great. Woo! But at the same time, you're thinking to yourself, like, I can't even fuck with you about this, dude. Like, dude, you're shitting into a vat. That's funny. It's not funny, man. The earth is going down. He was like, all right, fuck, whatever, dude. Keep playing your flute. I listen to him. Okay, 2 more questions. I'm gonna grab him in the back first. So yeah.
Hey, Devin, thanks for being here.
Well, Deconstruction was an interesting one because I had sort of set myself up from the beginning of the DTP project to do that record. The concept of Deconstruction was, I think when I was younger, I had a real diluted sense that I understood things. You know, I remember, you know, when you're a kid and you're sitting with your buddies and you're all high and you're like, I wonder if trees dream, bro. You know, and then you have those moments where you're like, dude, it's all an infinite mosaic and it's all reflections of an eternal present and it's like fractals of reality and modular forms, elliptic curves, and it's all beauty and it all happens to me and I'm the center, yet I'm like the kite that's in the wind, stationary, and the stationary point is all of it, all that shit. And it's like, I really thought for a certain amount of time, I was like, oh, I'm so close to figuring out the meaning of life. So Deconstruction was the record that is, the concept of it is about arrogance, I think. And that arrogance of thinking that as this primitive species that we are, that we've got any connection to being able to understand that fundamentally at all. So the story is about a guy that basically goes into hell as a metaphor for his own fears, and then he's looking into, you know, and he's trying to deconstruct it mathematically to understand the reasons of the universe. In the middle, he realizes that what he's looking at is a cheeseburger, right? And he can't even participate in it because he's a vegetarian. And as a side note, getting this choir in Amsterdam to sing about masturbating and a cheeseburger was fucking awesome. And so the end of that record is supposed to be like, well, you just surrender to it, you know? And to try and figure out the infinite is just madness. It's like silly. Like, it's by its nature. To try and figure it out is an exercise in arrogance. So Deconstruction was something that the process just required me like just pacing myself and being like, okay, take a deep breath. When it gets too much, just step away, go play with your kid or go in for dinner or take the weekends off. It wasn't like an obsession thing. It wasn't like Alien where I was like, well, I'm going to do this and it's going to be like super intense or infinity. And then you make incredibly bad life decisions and spend the next 10 years trying to be like, I'm sorry. So with Deconstruction, it was just very calculated, very slow, and I just took it day at a time. And by the end of it, it was actually not that stressful of a situation. Yeah. One more? Yes, sir.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
When we're getting started in music and you have your band, things are going well and you're getting shows and you're doing some recordings, but when you hit those obstacles, those challenges where you go, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore, it's not going anywhere. Did you have those moments? And when you had those moments, what was it inside that said, I just gotta keep doing it? It doesn't matter.
Well, I'll relay a story with a story, which is sort of my trip, apparently. I got a buddy who we were supposed to do an improv thing together, where we go out on this boat in Sweden or something, and we do an improv gig. And we were going to do it, but he was like, I can't do it. And I was like, why? He said, because I'm going to fuck it up. And if I fuck it up, I'm never going to be able to live it down. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's interesting. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, you know, when I was very young, like with the Vi thing and all this sort of stuff, man, it was humiliating. As awesome as it was, the amount of people that didn't want to hear a 19-year-old kid shrieking on Vi's music was everybody, essentially. And I remember being just hated everything after that. It was so embarrassing because I felt like, you know, I've made a fool of myself and all this sort of stuff. And I ultimately didn't, but that was my interpretation of it at the time. And then I remember joining the Wild Hearts, and then it's like a bunch of shit went south, and then the first strapping record, and then I got dropped by Roadrunner, and it's just, there's a bunch of things that were really like embarrassing for me as a kid. But as a result of getting that sort of public humiliation out of the way so quickly, like what do you got to lose? Like, I'm not afraid to fail. And my buddy, because he's never really failed, I think that's the reason why he wasn't into the improv side of it, because he's like, he hadn't had practical knowledge of what it's like to be like humiliated. And in a sense, that also applies to people who haven't put out a record. There's people I know that are maybe still working on their first record 10 years later, like, oh, it's gonna come out, but it's not perfect yet, right? But I think that until you get that first record out, and if you use that first record as like the idea of like, until I fail, until I put out something imperfect, you're never going to see what's behind that. And what's behind that is where the good stuff is. You know, I'm on record 30 and I'm nowhere near succeeding in terms of my artistic vision. But that can't stop you from doing it. And I think if you are trying to become a musician and if you're trying to get out there in public, your only opportunity is to just it's like the Nike thing, right? Just employ kids in Malaysia. Honestly, though, it's like learning to fail efficiently is your best move as a musician, right? Like even the other day, like I was in a weird frame of mind in Philly, and I remember we got out on stage, and there's this part in Higher that it's like I'm supposed to go like, but I didn't sleep well and probably ate tomatoes. And I came up to the microphone. I was making all the googly-eyed faces to make people think that I was like super intense and into it. And I went up to the mic and I was like, bah! You know what I mean? And I thought, oh, okay, that was the first one. I'll get past this one. I'll go for the second. The second was like, ha! But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You know? And how many bands are better than my band? Like tons. How many bands are worse? Tons. Fuck it. You know what I mean? Basically, my whole objective with making music and being away from home is times are fucking brutal, man. Everything's so depressing and there's so much darkness everywhere, man. I just want to, if I'm going to be out here, I want to try and make people happy. I want to try and do something that I'm proud of. And I want to be accountable for everything that I've done so that the people that I'm with, it's like you're trying to connect with people. You're trying to make things a little better, ultimately. And I'm not trying to be the best. I'm just trying to do what I can, right? So I think that applies to everybody. Guys, I really appreciate you being here. And right. So basically, here's my guitar licks. Oh my God. I figured because it's a guitar clinic, I gotta do this shit too. What else do I do? I do that lick. And you talk over it. I think that's the whole thing, right? I remember thinking about sweep arpeggios when I was a kid. That's all I wanted to do. I remember it was Cacophony. That was the record. And I remember thinking, man, if I could do that when I get older, I'd do nothing else, right? Yeah. But then all of a sudden you realize that all this technique shit's just a means to an end. So I do this. Hooray, buy my record. All right, so thank you so much for being here, guys. If anybody wants any pictures or if we want anything signed, I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you very much to Axe Palace and Nick. Thank you. I also like to thank, of course, Framus, Fishman, Mesa, everybody else who I've duped into thinking that my trip is going to sell them anything. Thank you very much for supporting me. And honestly, thank you guys. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can't do it without your support. Please download everything and share it with your buddies. Cheers, man.